In this video I'm going to briefly talk about each of the project settings. Select Configuration Settings. This is the project settings window. The launch runtime on program start launches runtime when the configuration program is started. User level to quit is the required user level to quit runtime monitoring. On program start automatically log on director, you can select which user you want to have automatically logged on when the program starts, or you can select none. These are the default assignments for the function keys at runtime. You can select none if you don't want any of the function keys to be assigned, or you can reassign them as you see fit. Home screen is the first screen that you want open when runtime monitoring begins. Quality bad color is the color that the graphic element will be displayed in when the tag that is used for the animation has a bad quality, meaning that the tag can't determine the correct value because it's lost communications with the external device. Runtime screen printing enables the print screen button on the keyboard to capture the window. It saves it to a file and then sends it to the default defined printer and then deletes the file. Sound delay is how long a delay you want between the playing of alarm sounds. If you had just one alarm going on, for example high gas, it's how long do you want to wait between high gas is played and it's played again, assuming the alarm hasn't been acknowledged. If you had two alarms playing, for example high gas and high gas would play, this value would determine how long it waited until the high gas was played, and then it would wait again to determine how long the high gas was played. So it plays all the sounds in a round robin. Analog equal difference is comparing floating point numbers for equality typically fails because it's a floating point number. So the two numbers, one number subtracted from the other one, and the difference defines if the numbers are equal. User level to disable alarms is for alarms that can be disabled at runtime. If your user level is not high enough, you can't disable alarms. Alarm deadband is for analog values. This is the amount of change, percent of full scale, that the alarm must return below or above the alarm point before the alarm can be cleared. So if an alarm goes off at 50%, it has to come down to 47% before the alarm is considered returned to normal. Log file settings, these different features have different locations to store their logs. And the retain is the number of days to retain the alarm. So every night at midnight when it creates a new alarm file or event log file, it checks the age of the file, and if the file is greater than 180 days, it deletes the file, or whatever value you configure here. If you want to always retain the file, set the value to 0, and none of the files will be deleted. Eventually your hard drive would fill up, so you have to be cautious when you use that. Script says a selection to run a script on runtime start and while runtime is running. If we had some scripts configured, you could select one. Miscellaneous file settings is just a location to store miscellaneous files. This is where files are stored, for example, for video captures. This is where files are stored when you want to capture a frame of a video. Runtime screen printing prints to this directory, prints the file, and then deletes it. Miscellaneous files is just a place for miscellaneous files. This is for the graphics editor. Grid spacing, if you have the grid turned on, this is the default spacing. This is if you want the grid to be visible. This is the grid visibility if you want the grid to be displayed above the elements, below the elements, or none. Warn on ungroup with animation configured is if a group of elements has animation. For example, you have 3 or 4 elements and they're grouped together with a hide show. If you ungroup that element, the animation will be lost, and with this attribute checked, you will be warned before the ungrouping takes place. Runtime alarm printing is for printing alarms, if you have any enabled. The alarm print level is the number of alarms to print per page. It's a way to save paper. So if you select 4, it will wait until it has 4 alarms before it outputs the page. Each alarm, I think, takes 3 or 4 lines to print. And then you select the printer if you want to have a printer. This computer doesn't have any printers selected, so I'm sorry, this printer doesn't have any printers configured, so none are shown here. Pop-up keyboard, log on window, runtime. For touchscreens, this allows a visual keyboard to appear right below the logon window, where you can type in the password if passwords are used. HTTP web server. The web server is a 100% HTTP web server. It's all HTML. It doesn't use anything but HTML. If you enable it, the server starts at runtime. Bold is for the alarms to appear bold in the browser if it's true. This is for listing only enabled tags. Some tags can be disabled, so for example the port can be disabled, so it doesn't show ones that aren't enabled. Port number is a default HTTP port number. Maximum clients is the maximum number of people that connect to the runtime program. If you set it to 0, it's unlimited. You can limit it to like 5 or 1. Background color is the background color of the window in the browser. Refresh time is how frequently you want to have the page refresh. Use this one with caution. Some browsers will scroll the window back to the top whenever a refresh is done. So if the user scroll down and looking at something and the refresh time comes around, it scrolls them all the way back up to the top. Writes enabled allows the user via the browser to set tags. Log writes means to log what is written. User level is the user level to execute writes in the external device. Logon required is that the user needs to log on based on the user settings for the project, and it defines the user level. Look at the help file for how these three actually work together to define if the user can do something externally or remotely via a browser. Scripts is scripts enabled. Log scripts, user level. If scripts are enabled, it shows on the browser all of the scripts, and then it logs if one of them is executed. Drive checking is at midnight when it does all of its file work. It checks to see if there's enough room on the hard drive. So percent remaining is the drive is checked for how much free space. It's going to check C drive, for example, and if less than 10% is remaining, it notifies the operator. Printing will print it out to a printer. Then you can play a sound if it's less than 10%. And then when it does the check, it logs it into the log, into the event log. So if you looked at the event log, you could see how much space was left for each of the individual drives. This is how you select the drives. If you just have C, you would select C. If you have A and C, you would type A and C or C and A. Camera server is for remote HMI to HMI ports to be able to look at video collected on one HMI in another HMI. So if the HMI to HMI server is enabled and you also want to enable video between the HMI servers or programs, you would enable it. These are just the default number and the maximum number of clients that can use the camera at one time. The help file is pretty extensive. So I would suggest looking at all the different attributes having to do with the help files.